Black Sabbath is, pardon the cliche, a band that really needs no introduction, especially if you're someone who's clicked to watch a video reviewing their second album from 50 years ago. Everyone listens to Black Sabbath, or at least knows of Black Sabbath, or is at the very, very least familiar with their legacy. What legacy is that? Well, heavy guitar music, of course. Now, I will cede that there was plenty of heavy rock music burgeoning around this era, cranking the volume ever louder and achieving higher levels of feedback and distortion. In fact, two of the Sabbath's contemporaries, Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, are almost equally as acknowledged for being an influence in all distorted guitar music to come. What set Black Sabbath apart from the other groups of the era, however, was their fusion of the loud, heavy blues of late-stage Cream and the pseudo-satanic and occult leanings of bands like Coven, who, coincidentally, featured a band member named John Osborne at the time and had a song titled Black Sabbath. Now, while Deep Purple were busy with proto-prog and classical music, and Led Zeppelin were still grappling with shedding their early blues rock in favor of the archetypal classic rock they'd become mega successful with, Black Sabbath were tinkering with almost entirely minor modes and dark lyrics that pushed the realm of acceptability in music and would lead to them being labeled Satanists by the media, a label which the band resented, and eventually led to the Jesus rock lyrics of After Forever from the following year's Master of Reality. But today, we're here to discuss their second album, Paranoid. I technically could have also talked about their debut, but honestly, there are only 3 songs that really merit discussion from that album. Evil Woman is a pointless radio song, and the entire second half is blues rock meandering. The band, despite their blues origins, cannot truly pull off the way acts like the aforementioned Cream can. The band, probably realizing this and understanding the power that songs like Black Sabbath, The Wizard, and NIB held, almost completely shed this original approach by the time of recording this album. And boy, what a decision that was. There's a lot of debate about when heavy metal was born, with many people pointing to various songs like Blue Cheer's cover of Summertime Blues, Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild, and Iron Butterfly's Inagata da Vida. The one thing that most people seem to agree upon, however, is that the first heavy metal song came no later than the song Black Sabbath, by the band Black Sabbath, from the album Black Sabbath. Unfortunately, calling the whole album Black Sabbath heavy metal is rather a stretch. With Paranoid, however, this is far from the case. The album is front to back a master course on heavy riff writing. It is the epicenter from which all further ripples of heavy guitar music emanate. This is the first true album of heavy metal as we know it. We have pummeling riffs that encapsulate the harsh industrial sounds of the group's native Birmingham, deep bass that provides those low frequencies we often associate with the heaviest music, crashing drums that provide the backbone of the beast, and, to top it all off, wailing vocals that are a far cry from anything you could call truly melodic or even musical. The band's sound on this album was a controlled chaos, begging you to just indulge in it just a little and turn the volume ever higher. But this is only most of the time. Something people don't seem to talk about a lot when it comes to Black Sabbath is their dynamics, or their knowledge of dynamics, more like. Most of their albums from this period intermix the heavy metal thunder the band is famous for with softer textures and more experimental sonic vignettes. In this album, this takes the form of the song Planet Caravan, which is placed strategically between the manic rush of the title track and the trudging behemoth that is Iron Man. The song, which uses clean guitars, soft percussion, and effects-laden vocals, offers a brief point of respite in the album, though its inclusion in the first half of the record would, initially, seem to indicate that almost 27 of the 42 minutes the album runs for are uninterrupted heavy metal, which turns out to not be the case, as the band showcases intra-song dynamics a couple of tracks later in the song Hand of Doom, where the verses are backed by a quiet accompaniment of bass and drums before the guitar slips in to herald the loud would-be choruses. Later, we even get treated to a series of quick drum breaks in the instrumental Rat Salad, which break up the heavy guitar riffs. All this works to make sure the album doesn't suffer from any feeling of monotony through its 8 tracks. Though that doesn't mean that the straightforward heavy parts are uninteresting or anything, it's just more of a display of the band's understanding of how diverse soundscapes and dynamics can create a more interesting and full listening experience sometimes. These thought processes can clearly be seen more distinctly in some of their later albums from the decade, namely the triad that is Volume 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage, and even the works of other bands within the genre, like Judas Priest. Aside from its musical elements, the album was also important in expanding the lyrical repertoire that the genre could touch upon. While the first album touched on the occult and fantasy, both of which would become focal lyrical points for many bands to come, Paranoid opens with one of the most poignant anti-war songs of the Vietnam era with War Pigs, and then continues lightly onto mental health issues on Paranoid, some final ruminations from the psychedelic era on Planet Caravan, wanton destruction and vengeance on Iron Man, nuclear devastation on Electric Funeral, PTSD and drug abuse in Hand of Doom, and maybe skinheads on Fairies Wear Boots? I don't know. The band hasn't come to an actual consensus on that, so I can't say definitively. It could be another final rumination on the psychedelic era, because some illicit drugs may have been involved, but I know I just ran through every single song on the album, but I just need to stress how every single one of these topics basically has become typical lyrical fodder for metal bands of all makes. I mean, is there an Alice in Chains without a Hand of Doom? The answer is no. There isn't. There is no Alice in Chains without Black Sabbath. And that's not a world that I want to live in. Overall, this is a great album. It's a true classic of the genre, an important landmark in the development of guitar music, and one of the greatest albums of all time. It's been a personal favorite since I began exploring heavy metal, and, though it is no longer my favorite Black Sabbath record, and it does have some stiff competition when it comes to the title of Best Black Sabbath Album, it is truly their greatest and most important one. This is the album that marked the true beginning of heavy metal music, and is a must-listen for anyone interested in doom metal, in stoner metal, in sludge metal, and just metal as a whole. This is a great album. And with all this in mind, I give it a classic rating out of 10. I'm thinking of revamping my rating system. I'm not entirely sure what to do. I have a lot of thoughts on what could work pretty well, but I'm not entirely sure what I like best. So for now, I'll be a little experimental in some of these reviews. So for now, just a classic, basically a perfect score in this regard. It's a great album. It's a must listen for anybody interested in heavy music. Highlights are basically the whole album. I don't think there are any weak links here. Some people don't like Planet Caravan, but I think those people are dumb, because it's, like I said earlier, a nice break from all the other crazy stuff that's going on in the album. And it's not even something that is unique to Paranoid. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a triad of albums that kind of make their bread and butter on these dynamics of sorts. And to all the detractors, Planet Caravan was later covered by Pantera on Far Beyond Driven in 1994, so that should say something about the quality of the writing and the instrumentation. So, like I said, classic out of 10. Recommend to anybody. And yeah, bye-bye.